Welcome back to Alive and Well Community's Daily Dose, your daily dose of support. We know that one of the ways that we can help to take excellent care of ourselves is become involved in our community. And we know that right now that may look very differently during this time of COVID. But we know that becoming involved, volunteering, and ensuring that our community as a whole is alive and well is important for each and every one of us, recognizing we each play a role in building a live and well community. Today, we're going to be joined by Lee from Arch City Defenders, who's going to talk to us about advocacy and how we can get involved in really crucial issues to support the well being of our communities. So, Lee, thank you so very much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks.
Now, before we get rolling right along, I want to share some information about Lee. Lee is such a great resource, not just here in the St. Louis region, but across the state, really working to ensure that issues of housing and homelessness are addressed in an equitable way and that everyone has a voice around the table. Now, Lee's a staff attorney with Arch City Defenders, and he also, beyond just doing litigation work around housing and homelessness, also does a lot of organizing, advocacy, and legislative outreach, in addition to working with statewide coalitions, including some of our partners in Kansas City, including the KC Tenants. So, Lee, thank you so very much for joining us. I'm really excited to learn more about how we can become involved to ensure that during this time, everyone is alive and well, including that primary issues of housing and homelessness are addressed.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Lee, can you share with us a little bit of the work that you've been doing with Arch City Defenders as well as statewide coalitions that you've been working with?
Yeah, sure. Particular to this moment in time, it's been very interesting being a civil rights attorney that works on these issues. Primarily, as we see things shift down for a lot of the bar for attorneys like myself that don't practice in this area, it seems our workload has increased. And personally, it's been very rewarding work, but we recognize as an organization that it is very, very necessary work in this moment, that we are looking out for the interests of our most vulnerable citizens, not only in St. Louis, but across the state, and that we hear their truth in what they've said, our client base, that the normal was not always working for them in normal times for most of us. And we're actively working in different ways to try and identify issues that maybe don't need to return to the way they were beforehand. Primarily myself, again, I work on issues related to housing and homelessness. I work on a variety of different legal issues, but my real passion is working on these housing issues, homelessness issues, and trying to change the way that we address those as a society and a community, again, both here in St. Louis, in the city and county, and then across the state. And so what that has looked like has been very interesting. It has been a combination of legal work. It's been a portion of it has been more federal advocacy than I'm used to doing. Being engaged with different individuals in DC as these large economic stimulus packages are passed, and that money, tracking that money as it begins to flow into the state, and watching where it goes. And then one really large component has been this coalition building around specific issues that affect low-income individuals that have issues of housing security or housing instability, and then the unhoused population, working with statewide advocates around ways that we can not only that I can not only as an attorney, represent the interests of those individuals in the courts, but that we can collectively bargain for and demand systemic change that is reactionary to the moment, but change that is necessary for the long term health and viability of all of our communities in the state.
No, such crucial work that you're doing and that your organization is doing to ensure the well-being of really our entire state. Now, it's really interesting to me that, there are these stay-at-home orders for our well-being and safety, but we know that homes are being compromised for many of our residents during this time. That as we're facing economic hardship, as times of uncertainty, that many individuals are having their housing rights violated, even though there's this kind of stay-at-home order that is being implemented for our well-being. So, can you talk a little bit about the work that's being done to ensure that people have a home to be able to stay safe during this time?
Sure. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. This is such an untenable situation for individuals that, one, don't have homes. We estimate, along with partners and social scientists and whatnot in the area, that in the city of St. Louis, there's approximately 700 individuals that are unhoused at any given moment. In addition to that, those individuals may not have a roof over their heads. Well, we know based on experience, and I've been practicing about 6 years now, and every month it seems I'm representing someone with a housing instability issue. So it isn't just the unhoused population; it's these families that chronically deal with this reality that they're one emergency away from losing their home. And so we have worked in a variety of ways, again, to address those, some more successful than others. And that is somewhat the game when you're doing this, particularly in our situation. But to try to protect people's housing that they have now, one place that we've advocated, and St. Louis really appears to be leading the way on across the state, and others have followed, and we're happy to see that, is we have worked with our courts, and been in communication with a lot of different partners to ask that they essentially halt these processes that could lead to lawful evictions and evicting families that are behind on rent, either that were behind on rent before everything started in mid-March, or those that have really fallen into economic uncertainty in light of losing your job or having to split your income in different ways as childcare costs go up, or other, your food costs in your home go up and whatnot. So we've been able to work with the courts on those. If you're in St. Louis City or St. Louis County, you have more protections than almost anywhere in the state to not physically be removed through the courts, have a lawful eviction occur against you just because you're behind on money. There are some statewide protections that generally come from the federal government if you live in housing that is primarily for low-income individuals, with subsidies or Section 8 housing choice vouchers and things like that. There is a federal eviction moratorium that prevents evictions in these federally subsidized housing programs that runs through July 25th, and that applies to the state. But while we have these incremental things happening locally to protect the residents, we do know that the courts will recalibrate and reopen as society reopens, and these are not permanent fixes. And as this somewhat a la carte approach happens, where the law is different regarding housing stability and evictions here in St. Louis than it is in just one county over in St. Charles, that this approach really needs to be addressed at a systemic statewide level. And that is where we have really engaged in policy work, primarily with a coalition of different organizations and individuals across the state called the Coalition to Protect Missouri Tenants. Again, you mentioned the Kansas City work. The organization KC Tenants, it's activists and organizers in Kansas City that really beat the pavement up every day to protect tenants' rights in their community. They have stepped up in a great way, and we have, done our part to join in that coalition. And um, try to help them move the needle to make this a statewide issue. What started out, very uncertain. How would we meet? How could you take action in the middle of these moments of social distancing? Have actually been a really good learning experience and an opportunity to grow a statewide coalition from all four corners of the state, to go to the governor and the legislature and say, it is time we have housing protections for individuals now, particularly in this moment of COVID-19, but the movement building itself, which has to happen while we're also making demands, is really growing organically in this time, and we're excited to see that happening. And for those that are interested in joining in on that, we encourage you to join in, to read our demands, to follow what we're doing. KC tenants on their website have a kind of portal into this information, and you can sign on to a petition to endorse these demands. You can just join in on our meetings. We'd love to have you. But that has been much more of a statewide, at this point, it's been much more of a statewide focused campaign on getting rent relief from the governor, getting mortgage suspensions from the governor, getting statewide policy on issues of homelessness, and really putting pressure, as well as federal money flows into the state, that it goes to these very issues that we know are hurting our communities deeply in this moment.
Yeah. So you started to talk a little bit about this, and again, we know that in order to have an alive and well community, that everyone plays a role in that process. So how is it that if we have the privilege of housing security during this time, how is it that we can take an active role, advocate to ensure our entire community is alive and well?
Well, one, I would definitely say stay tuned. We would very much encourage you to follow Arch City Defenders. You can go to our website. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. We are very active on social media, and it really is a crucial arm of our mission and what we do to actually see that through. But we will be sending out more information about ways that individuals can get involved. But you're right. For those of us that have the privileges of housing stability and are looking for ways to get involved on these issues, particularly over the next couple of weeks, we're going to see the landscape shift and change again, where there may be, we're pretty confident another federal stimulus package is coming through that is going to specifically include over $100 billion in assistance for rental assistance that is going to flow directly to our communities. It may come through the state government, but it eventually will be dispersed to our communities. So actively engaging with your local elected officials, actively engaging with your statewide officials, and then you can turn to us. We can push the information out, but we also need to be in the ears of those in Congress right now to say, housing is an issue in my community and homelessness is an issue in my community. We need help addressing those issues. And so contacting those officials is great. But again, as this organizational build out comes, it is going to take actual physical steps on a local level to see these demands actualized. One great example of an organization doing just that in St. Louis is Tent Mission St. Louis. They are an organization of outreach workers, entirely volunteer outreach workers, who are providing meals to the unhoused population, who have gone out and helped those that aren't fortunate to have homes or bank accounts apply for economic stimulus payments, the ones that almost all of us in the country received, direct that money down. That organization is grassroots and doing the work on the ground every day. And there are countless different organizations, from Tent Mission working with that population to different food banks and faith-based leaders that are stepping up in different ways. We would, if something piques your interest and you really want to get involved and support those organizations, they need your financial support. They need your physical labor, if you can do that right now in a safe way, and they need your political support in this very moment. one place you can turn for a lot of this. We've pulled together two different. Our city and the way we've approached this is very much in different lanes internally, and that's, again, we're learning like everyone, and approaching things differently day to day. But we are approaching things as sending out resources to the community and compiling those resources for partners, but also we host a list of policy demands as well. You can find links to those on our websites, but I can also share those as well at some point today. And I would just say, I mean, if you're interested in the cause right now, no one is going to turn down the offer for help. We all may be a little slow to respond as things are piling up, particularly on the plates of nonprofits, but we need the help right now. At the minimum, we need the financial support and the resources that you direct our way.
No, thank you so much, because we really start to see that during this time of stay-at-home orders, how having a roof over our head is such a privilege. And for some, as you mentioned, that's a paycheck to paycheck kind of deal of ensuring that there's a secure roof over our head. And so to ensure that we have a live and well community, we have to work together. And recognizing that some individuals in our community don't have a roof over their head, but that we can work together to help to support that everyone is alive and well during this time. Now, one of the things that you mentioned a little bit earlier is that things are changing day to day. So if someone needs support, or if someone needs access to be able to fight an eviction, or access to be able to have the funds to sustain their home, I know a lot of it is pending and waiving the,
Sure.
but how is it that someone who may be in need today becomes connected to those resources?
Yeah, and not even just these kind of legal matters, but our collateral financial problems that pop up and food security issues. One of the things that I mentioned is we've worked with partners to try to centralize a place where individuals can go. And if you go to stlouisregionalresources.org, we are a partner in a large coalition of different organizations that are compiling all kind of an entry point and a gateway where you can access the different information for the issues that are particularly affecting your life at this moment, whether that be legal. Obviously, on the legal front, we would encourage you to contact us, and we work primarily in different issues around, housing, homelessness, criminal and municipal defense representation. We engage in large scale systemic civil rights work. There are different legal partners that we can point you to. The Traditional Legal Aid Office, Legal Services of Eastern Missouri, represents a lot of people across a variety of different issues. EHOC, which is a fair housing group that I work closely with, work on discrimination issues as they relate to housing. There are different organizations like organizers here. Action St. Louis is one of the greatest and one of our partners that we work with to move the policy change needle. And then there are different organizations working in housing and homelessness like Tent Mission St. Louis and Homes for All St. Louis that you can get involved with. But really the entry point to learn about all of those different things, and then to access resources specifically to your situation to get that immediate relief, or at least find the contact person to contact for that relief, would be to go to stlouisregionalresources.org. And I think that you will find it's very accessible, that it was designed in mind with that. Mikhail Ornbaum put tons and tons of time into that. And, if you're having trouble using that website or whatever, you can still always call us. Our city has always approached our engagement with the community as being an open door. And you can call our office, even if it's just to find one of these websites, or go to our website, or send us a Facebook message. We'll do our best to point you in the right direction. And it may be just pointing you to one of these larger resources we've worked to compile.
Thank you. Now, I know we mentioned a lot of St. Louis specific resources. We have viewers who tune in from across the state of Missouri. If I'm living maybe somewhere else, whether it be in a more urban area like Columbia or Kansas City, or maybe in a rural area like our Boot Heel region, how is it that people would access resources in those areas to ensure that they have what they need and deserve?
Sure. I'm happy to follow up on that with more specifics. I engage with individuals outstate frequently, and literally, I can connect you to those partners that I'm working with. But if it all comes through me, I know that that backlog is just never going to act as fast as I would need it to. So I'm happy to point to maybe do some follow up and point to some of those different resources that do exist outstate. Um, I know I work on the policy front. If you're interested in engaging policy wise, I work very closely with Empower Missouri, that is tuned in to these issues around the state. And they, very much like us, do not only approach things from a policy lens, but try to connect people to different local resources. That's one place that I would go. But again, I do realize that's a policy based organization. I wish that I had all of the knowledge and could provide link after link to every great community organization out there. But I mean, some of the, the tested methods always exist. The faith-based leaders and communities almost are always working closely with their nonprofits, area food banks throughout the state. Food banks almost always know all of the lateral issues that face their communities, and will probably be able to connect individuals. And then kind of a new ally of ours, and one thing that we've really been relying on, are local credit unions, more community-based banks, to find out about different resources for financial stability. So I would always encourage people to try to do things in a community-centered way, and those organizations are community-centered by design and will likely know exactly where to turn for your specific issues.
No, thank you. We appreciate that. Now, I I have so many questions, and so I hope I'm not overwhelming you. Um, I know one of the things I've been reading about is for individuals, who may have had some economic changes in their situation, that they may have taken a forbearance in their mortgage that was designed to not impact their credit score negatively. But now we're learning across the country and even in our state that some of those who have used that method are now seeing negative reports or negative comments on their credit scores. Can you share a little bit about that with us?
Yeah, I think one thing, and this is intended to be general information, not direct legal advice. One thing we have to remember, particular to forbearance programs, whether that is in connection with mortgages or generally with things like student loans, is those are programs that put a pause on your requirement to pay in that very moment, but they don't obviate the eventual obligation to pay. Those loans will become due at some point and need to be paid. I do think one thing that has been tricky is when the CARES Act initially came down, and that's where a lot of this mortgage forbearance language really comes from. The bill that was passed in late March by Congress and was initially intended to be a quick economic stimulus and a quick way to give economic security to individuals in the country. It passed through some more non-traditional means, meaning that money flows through streams that it didn't traditionally pass through. Regulations were relaxed in ways that they're not traditionally relaxed for these moments, and we are seeing that some of those areas that were specifically addressed by the CARES Act, while it's great to have them acknowledged, were not fully, maybe the pragmatic aspect of how these things would play out weren't fully contemplated at that moment because of the rushed nature to preserve the economy and to try to provide some economic security to individuals. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we do know that there is a fourth stimulus package in the works right now, and we we fully expect a lot of these things like mortgages, again, to be addressed by that package. Rental stability, again, money that will go towards different things that will help small businesses, or provide rental assistance to individuals, or mortgage assistance to individuals, should be coming. Again, I'm not in DC, and I don't lobby Congress, so I can't make promises on that. But we are hoping to have clarity on how all of those things will work out. Hopefully, understand how you can challenge these things like bad credit reporting and whatnot in light of these different bills as they roll out. But you can always reach out to us and to other attorneys throughout the state on things like credit, a challenging credit reporting that you disagree with. I know that I work with individuals on that quite frequently. And then there are also credit counselors that help with those things. Again, some of these illegal actions that may be occurring because no one has really thought about the legal ramifications, or have never been challenged on it. Sometimes it takes the first person being vocal about, I thought this would not happen to me, to change the practice of that happening to a whole certain group of people. But those type of issues, I mean, I would love to hear about those issues at our office. We don't know everything that is affecting the community without the community communicating with us. So things like credit reporting are going to be very vital to long-term economic security, and we realize that, and we want to work on those issues alongside you and try to nip these things in the bud as quick as we can. But we have to be presented with them too. So it's interesting to hear that that's going on for individuals.
No. So as our time unfortunately comes to a conclusion, Lee, is there anything else that you would share with us about how we might get involved, what we can stay tuned for, what we can do to support an alive and well community?
Yeah, I know I've directed a lot to us. One, on the policy front, I think this is a moment where people are being brought into the political process that maybe never expected to be there, and understanding. A lot of us are seeing the rubber hit the road for the first time, of what's happening in DC is now happening in my community. What is happening in Jefferson City is happening in my community. And then what happens in my local council or board is affecting me directly. And that's a good thing. I mean, we should encourage individuals to be involved in those processes. We have released, specific to St. Louis, and then a handful of statewide policy demands that were curated by probably 30 or 40 different organizations throughout the state, anyone from the ACLU to the public defender to groups like Empower, local organizations around the state. These different policy demands that address response to COVID-19. That's on stlcovidhub.org. It's a website that we host with our partners, Action St. Louis and the St. Louis American. And if you're looking to learn more about, what you can do to be involved politically, what our lawmakers are doing right now and our elected officials are doing to react to those different policy demands, it's a pretty comprehensive place to learn about everything from the rights of unhoused individuals to those that are incarcerated, to those that are just the working poor right now. It's a great place for political education. And if you find, again, that something, something is there that you really support, we have avenues to join into those causes and to follow along with work that we're doing or work that our partners are doing outstate. And, it is a positive way to take this kind of negative moment and use it in a way to gain political momentum and to reinvigorate yourself, possibly, in getting involved in the political process.
Well, Lee, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
And on behalf of Live and Well Communities, we salute you and we thank you for the work you're doing to address housing and homelessness and ensuring that our community is alive and well. Now, for those of you who are tuning in live or tuning in after the fact, your daily challenge today is going to be to think about how you can get involved in this issue of housing and homelessness, to either advocate or to provide resources for someone else, and wanting to also lift up that even though we're talking about housing and homelessness during a time of COVID-19, that this is an issue that existed even before COVID and that will exist afterwards. And it's an issue that's important to elevate to continue to build an alive and well community. So again, many thanks to you, Lee,
Yeah,
for
thank you.
us, and then to our viewers. And to our viewers, please tune in tomorrow for another great episode of The Daily Dose. We'll see you back here then.